The first time I saw her, I was standing at the edge of the Valerian trade bazaar, watching the crowd surge like liquid metal across the docking platforms. Ships from a dozen star systems gleamed under the twin suns of Viridian 5, their hulls humming faintly with energy. Merchants hawked exotic foods and goods, from luminescent coral pearls to synthetic neural amplifiers. Amid this kaleidoscope of life, she appeared, standing alone near a cluster of traders, her eyes reflecting the light in a way that made the space around her seem muted. She was called Seraphine, though no one dared to speak her name aloud. Among the outer colonies, an alien of her kind, the Tellurians, was a rarity, and rarities, it seemed, carried a burden. Her appearance was unsettling to most. A tall frame with delicate, almost crystalline skin that shimmered faintly blue under the suns, and a face that, though beautiful, carried the sharp angles of a predator. Her tendrils, which served as both hair and sensory appendages, floated lazily around her head, moving as if aware of every sound in the market. And yet, there was a gravity about her that drew me in. I had heard the whispers long before I saw her in person. The Tellurian woman had lived for decades in the outer colonies, moving from station to station, never settling. Every marriage council, every diplomatic envoy, every private inquiry, she had refused. No one wanted to marry her, not because of her alien nature, but because of what she carried. Rumors of the curse of Solara. The curse, as it was called, was more superstition than fact. It was said that any being who married a Tellurian would find themselves consumed by the shadow of desire and obsession, a state that could last for lifetimes. Some claimed they lost years of their lives, others, their minds. Those who tried to woo her found their ambitions crumble, their ships lost, their fortunes vanish. The reality, I later discovered, was far more mundane and yet far more terrifying. Seraphine did not reject suitors because of a curse. She rejected them because she had never found a being capable of understanding the depth of her solitude. I, on the other hand, had no such illusions. I was a linguist and exoanthropologist, working under the United Coalition of Worlds to study cross-species communication. I had spent years on uncharted worlds, translating languages that had no written form, deciphering signals that seemed chaotic, understanding emotions that had no vocal equivalent. I knew what it was to see and not be seen. I approached her in silence, as if my very presence was a form of apology. She did not speak initially. Her eyes, those strange, reflective orbs, regarded me with caution, yet without hostility. I extended my hand, not in a gesture of courtship, but in recognition. I see you. I understand, in part, what it is to be alone in a world that does not accept you. It was that small, silent acknowledgement that opened the first crack in her defenses. Days turned into weeks. I followed her movements, not as a suitor, but as a chronicler, documenting her interactions, her moods, her silences. She accepted my presence without words, allowing me to observe her from a distance. I learned that she had a fondness for the rare blue sunflowers that grew on the northern ridges of Viridian 5, that she hummed frequencies imperceptible to human ears, and that she slept in a cocoon of light that reflected her dreams as shifting colors. And then one night she spoke. "You follow me," she said, her voice a harmonic blend of syllables that seemed to resonate directly in the chest. "Why?" I paused, considering the answer. There was no simple truth that would not seem presumptuous. "Because no one else does," I said finally. That answer made her laugh, a sound like crystal chimes in a gentle wind. She did not move away. From that moment, our interactions became more deliberate. I spoke to her of my work, of the languages I had unraveled, the worlds I had mapped. She spoke of Tellurian customs, of her people's philosophy of light and perception, of how they measure the soul in oscillations and echoes rather than in words. I listened, and gradually, she listened to me. The turning point came during a diplomatic gathering on Station Core 9. The coalition had arranged a grand dinner, hoping to impress the Tellurian delegates and encourage trade. Seraphine was there, isolated at the edge of the room, and as always, no one approached her. I, of course, stepped forward in silence. The other delegates noticed, of course. Whispers filled the room. A human dares. He must be mad. The curse. I ignored them. I joined her side, bowing respectfully. "Shall we?" I asked, gesturing toward the seating arrangement. She tilted her head, regarding me with an expression that was almost amusement. Then, without a word, she took my hand, and we walked to the table. That night, under the soft glow of artificial starlight projected on the station dome, something shifted. The air between us was no longer measured by caution or curiosity. It was a recognition of kinship. The other delegates whispered, some openly gaping, but Seraphine and I shared a quiet understanding that transcended species, culture, and superstition. It was not easy. Nothing about this was easy. Every day was a negotiation of space, emotion, and perception. Seraphine's physiology was alien to human touch. Her emotions oscillated in waves that I struggled to keep pace with. But I had been trained to study chaos, to find patterns in disorder. And slowly, we learned each other's rhythms. Months passed. We became inseparable, yet still silent in public. I continued my studies, documenting her culture, translating her thoughts into forms humans could understand. She, in turn, began to explore human art, music, and language, often laughing at our absurdities, our stubborn need for order in a universe that did not care. Then came the question of marriage, not a formality for us, but a necessity in the eyes of the coalition. Seraphine's people did not require it. They measured commitment differently. But the outer colonies demanded it, and when the question was raised, as I suspected, no other suitor stepped forward. In the grand hall of the coalition embassy, she stood silently while a dozen dignitaries expressed their regrets. "We cannot," they said. "It is too dangerous, too unknown, too—" Seraphine's eyes, those luminous mirrors of the soul, scanned the room. Then she looked at me, and in that look there was an unspoken question, "Will you?" I stepped forward, without hesitation. "I will," I said, my voice carrying in the chamber. Silence fell like a tide. Some stared in shock, others in disgust. But she merely nodded, a simple tilt of her head, and extended her hand. The ceremony itself was unlike any human tradition. No rings, no vows and words, no rigid customs. Instead, we merged our life signals, my pulse with hers, my neural patterns with hers, the oscillations of our presence in the world intertwined. The Tellurian elders called it the weaving of echoes. I felt her memories, faintly, in the edges of my consciousness, and she felt my solitude, long endured, finally recognized. Afterward, the whispers did not cease, but they became background noise. Traders and diplomats still avoided our table at the bazaar, but it no longer mattered. We had found our rhythm in the silence, our bond in the spaces between words. Years passed. We traveled from world to world, translating, exploring, observing. Wherever we went, we encountered fear, suspicion, sometimes even hostility. Yet wherever we went, we also found wonder. Seraphine taught me to see light as a living thing, a fluid presence that could be molded with thought. I taught her to understand human humor, the subtle gestures that conveyed more than language ever could. Together, we built a bridge between our worlds. And one day, in a quiet corner of the northern ridge on Viridian 5, where the blue sunflowers grew in wild abundance, Seraphine turned to me and spoke, not in Tellurian harmonic tones, but in words I could understand perfectly. "I am no longer alone." I smiled. "Nor am I." In that moment, I realized the truth that had been obscured by superstition, fear, and prejudice. No curse had ever existed. The danger had always been in others' inability to see the humanity, the shared sentience, in one another. In stepping forward, in choosing to understand rather than judge, I had not only found Seraphine, but I had discovered the depth of my own courage. The galaxy did not change overnight. There were still whispers, still those who avoided the Tellurian woman, still those who feared what they did not understand. But we no longer needed their approval. In the quiet orbit of our lives, in the shared pulses and echoes of our beings, we had found a universe far richer than any star system or trade route could offer. And in the end, that was enough.